right? So I think that's the difference between the military and the fire services: lack of accountability, and we're operating more as a white collar organization nowadays than we are firefighters. And I'll close it off with this, right? Like, we run a lot of EMS, right? But we were supposed to be firefighters first. If we get stroke alerts, cardiac alerts, trauma alerts, like, we respond, we do our pre-hospital thing. But what do we do after that? We take them to the hospital, right? Because those are the specialists when it comes to healthcare. When grandma's house catches on fire in our jurisdiction, who's supposed to be the subject matter experts in the jurisdiction? That's us. We're supposed to be firefighters first. But do we have the message that the Army is telling their people? Like, you're a rifleman first? Are we telling our firefighters, you are a firefighter first?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Tailboard Misfits podcast. Today, I am honored to have Mr. Preston Lyons here on the podcast for us. He's going to tell us a little bit more about himself, but as far as we know, he runs the Fit.Fire.Fortitude page, producing some good content. He's a Navy veteran. He's a backstep fireman in Colorado, which we're going to hear more about. But other than that, Preston, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Ready to get down. Let's chat it up.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, Preston, I knew you were at Mile High, but I didn't know you were at Mile High when I was there. So we missed a solid opportunity to connect right then and there.
Yeah, I saw you posted something on Facebook, and I was like, oh man, which track did you take? And that was kind of the first time we actually even had a conversation. Was just, I commented on a picture that you posted from the Mile High Fire Conference.
Yeah, that conference, man. Hats off to those guys. I had a blast.
Yeah, the hands-on training out there, was top notch. The Brothers in Battle guys always bring it.
Yeah, that's why I'm excited for firemanship, man. I'm taking a VS beyond the door there, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there as well.
Sweet. So Preston, how did you get here? I know how long were you in the Navy?
I was in the Navy for 10 years. Actually, and that happened on accident. So I grew up in Los Angeles. I was a punk kid. I was avoiding gangs, just playing sports and barely making it in high school. And I didn't have any ambitions to go to college. I didn't have a career plan or anything like that. I was just, I just wanted a ball, and that was who I was. I graduated high school in 2003, and as you can imagine, a couple of years before that, 9/11, and we were going to war. We were actually ramping up to go to Iraq in 2003. So the military recruiters were hitting the high schools, and if to join the military, you got to take the ASVAB test, right? It's kind of like the SATs for the military. So all I knew when I came into school was, hey, if anybody wants to take the ASVAB test, you missed the 4 classes of the day to take the test. It's free, and then afterwards you can do whatever you want. And I'm like, oh, you can miss the first half of the day. That was the only reason why I even took the ASVAB test. Well, I did good enough to score the bare minimum to get into the military. It's not that I was dumb. I just didn't, I didn't have any drive. I had a, kind of mischievous upbringing, so to say. But I wanted to join the Marines. So the Marines came knocking first. And unfortunately, I had an uncle that was in the Marines before, and my grandmother was like, no, you are not joining the Marines, especially during wartime. So I went to the next recruiter next door to the Marines, which was the Navy guys. They were standing outside, tatted up, smoking cigarettes. And they're like, what's up, man? And next thing you know, 2 hours later, I'm signing on the dotted line to go to the Navy. I had zero plan to join the military, but, it saved my life, honestly. I don't know where I would be today if it wasn't for that. In the Navy, I was the guy, I like to tell people I was in the first 5 minutes of Top Gun, those guys working on the flight deck. I was one of those guys in the yellow shirt, flapping his arms around, directing aircraft. And eventually I rolled into crash and salvage. So if there's any emergencies, aircraft emergencies, dealing with ordnance, any kind of crashes, we were the first to respond. So I got into that, and that was kind of my introduction to the fire service. So after 10 years, you need to do 20 to retire to collect a pension from the military. So 10 years was kind of like either go all the way or get out. And I was 28 years old, and I said, I got to get out now if I'm going to start a career, because there's a lot of fire departments, they have an age cap. So I don't want to stay in and then, roll the dice. So I got out. I had the GI Bill. I went to paramedic school, got my associates in fire science, and I started applying. And in 2015, I got hired at my current department.
That's awesome, man. My driver on my current crew, he was in the Navy too, probably right around the same time period. I always joke with him because you guys are old. You graduated in '03. I'm not going to tell you how old I was in 2003, but I can promise you that I was in elementary school.
Yeah, that's starting to hit me a lot more when I start going around to the firehouses and having conversations. I had a Thanksgiving dinner with some guys from the firehouse, and I was the oldest one in the room. I was like, what is going on here? This is not how I envisioned things to be going. I thought I would be way more successful at my
Yeah.
age.
So you're a paramedic still, right?
I'm still a paramedic right now. Been doing that for about 10 years.
Awesome.
And my department runs EMS, kind of unfortunately, but we do a lot of
No, I feel you. So does
transports.
mine.
Yeah, we do a lot of especially. So I'm a suburban fire department, so that's kind of our bread and butter. We run EMS calls like clockwork. So they need a lot of paramedics, and I'm there to step up, and handle the job.
How many stations does your current department have?
Right now we have 7. We're in the
7.
process of building 2 more over the next 3 years, and then we're actually in talks with a merger of another department that could get us another 4. So, man, we're under the 200 personnel cap right now, but man, that's about to explode.
See, we have 8 stations. How many ambulances do you have?
We have 5.
5.
So we have a
Okay.
couple
So we
specialty
have 8
stations. We have
stations.
yeah.
8 stations, 6 ambulances, which we just got a 6th one.
Okay.
I've kind of been. How close are you to Denver?
Probably like 20-minute drive up the highway, up the interstate.
Okay, so my area would probably be considered way more rural than that, but we are we're a city. We have 8 stations. I might be mistaken, but somewhere around 160 line personnel. But we're busy, and I know that sounds like an overstatement or like a common statement for people to say, but we run anywhere from I think 22 to 25,000 calls a year, and just like everywhere else, primarily being EMS calls. Thankfully, we don't have to do transfers. We just do 911 transports. That's it. So.
Oh yeah, we don't do interfacility or anything like that. It seems like it though when you roll into some nursing homes and you're like, this is not a 911. What are we doing here? But
Critical labs,
it's the job right now. Maybe we'll figure it out sometime in the future. But that's kind of where we're at. What we're dealing with right now, especially being outside of Denver, is Denver's blown up over the past few years, and it's actually pushing a lot of people out to the suburbs. So our population and call volume has increased drastically over the past few years. So we're definitely feeling it.
So you are tailboard fireman, right?
Yes, right in
And
Bradford right now.
I listened to your Student of the Game podcast, and it sounds like you guys can promote straight from tailboard to officer.
We can. So we have 2 different routes you can go. You can either go what we call them the engineers or the chauffeurs. You can promote into that position, or you can go straight into company officer.
Man, that's awesome. I don't think I'd ever go to driver.
Well, I have the qualifications to drive because I truly believe if you're up in that right seat and you're managing a crew, leading a crew, you got to understand the position of the chauffeur, right? Especially if that person's supposed to be your right-hand man, you got to understand their job just a little bit. So when they're telling you something, you're like, you understand it, not just, hey, shut up, pull the lever, get the water going so we can do our job. Like, no, you got to be in the position a little bit just to get a taste.
Yeah, I definitely see the value in it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So Fit.Fire.Fortitude, man, where did that come from?
So if you remember, I'm going to say a taboo word, but during the Trump administration, I feel like we were extremely divided as a society, as a population, right? It got into the firehouses. We weren't talking about fire tactics and hose nozzles or anything like that. What are we talking about? We're talking about politics. We're talking about a wall. We're talking about all this stuff, which is valid arguments, but at the same time, it infected the fire service to where we were losing friendships. Right? It was the only conversation we were having, and my social media page was filled with sports, all non-fire stuff, right? And one day, I took inventory of my life, and I was like, I need to cut out some of this extra crap and I need to like filter down what I really, really want to focus on, what I want to be good at in my life, right? So the only pages I deleted everything except for certain pages, fitness pages, right? Firefighting pages and mental toughness pages, right? And it just popped up in my brain. I'm like, I'm following fitness, fire, and fortitude. And once I filtered all that out, it was amazing. The information that I got, like the Instagram algorithm understood what I was trying to receive, and social media turned into social networking again. Remember those days when we got Facebook to keep touch with our family that was far away or old high school friends, and then now we're using it as our main source of information for like what's going on in the world. And I was like, I don't need that. Let's refine it. So that's where Fit.Fire.Fortitude came from. Fitness, firefighting, mental toughness.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I've kind of went through my own little journey and had to remind myself of certain things. I went from a how to put it politely. I went to when I first got my first fire job. The department, I knew none of this existed. I didn't know fire conferences were a thing outside of FDIC. I didn't know classes were a thing. Man, like the department search class was like, okay, hold the person in front of your ankle. We're going to smoke out the bay. And
Yep.
hey, hopefully you don't run into the couch, right? Like I knew nothing about a search culture. Uh, Man, and when I got into the department that I'm in now, it's just like mind blowing. Like within the first couple of days of our new hire academy, I was like, golly, like what have I been missing? It was a point where I was like, and I almost feel negligent in the fact that if I just worked for an entire year for a department and I knew none of this, like it was like, holy shit, this was scary. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
was doing essentially the same job, way less busy, and I knew a fraction of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I knew at that point, you know, and it's just compounded, man, being around a bunch of just plugged in firemen that are about the job and are hungry to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got lucky is what I did, but
Yeah.
I really get that because just like you know, my social medias and life was just filled with a bunch of nonsense, more or less. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily negative stuff, but to a point where I kind of took an inventory of my life and rearranged it. Now, same thing, man. I was
Mm-hmm.
following same thing, bunch
Yeah.
of workout pages, fire pages, mental
It,
toughness pages.
and it's hard to explain it to anybody that hasn't done that for their influence. It doesn't even have to be social media, right? But wherever they're receiving their information, it's hard to explain to people because they're like, "Why are you always on Instagram?" I'm like, "I'm having a conversation with Corley Moore right now. I'm having a conversation with Kevin Pfluger, Matt Valdez, LJ Geist." Like, and
Yeah,
then I drop these names, and these people are like, "I don't even know who that is now." And like, whatever. And I'm like, "Okay, well, the problem." And I was on the same journey, except it wasn't a year in the fire service. It was 5 years in my fire service, in my firefighting career, in my fire department, where I only knew the way my fire department did things, and my brotherhood was limited to the people that I worked with in my own department, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's kind of inbred firefighting,
sure.
right? And I'll tell you a story. I almost quit when COVID hit. Man, we were masked up, goggles, rubber, everything, like sanitizing, all kinds of stuff. EMS calls once again went through the roof, like 300%. And I'm like, this isn't the fire service that I signed up for. I almost quit. I was looking into emergency management. Um, I forget. It was like 2021, there was a hurricane that hit Fort Myers, like Cape Coral area in Florida. And I actually was going to go with a disaster response organization, Team Rubicon. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but
Hmm.
I was going to deploy with them to get my feet wet, get some exposure into emergency management, and literally just leave the fire service. Well, my wave to go got canceled. And I was like, okay, well, I already got the time off from my department. Let me Google what else is going on in Florida. And I stumbled upon the Pensacola Fire Conference from County Fire Tactics, Chief Ike, what he's doing down there in Pensacola Beach. I had no idea, but it aligned with the exact timeline I was going to go to this disaster response wave with this wave. And so I even went a step further and asked my department. I was like, "Hey, would you mind paying for me to go to this conference? I already have the time off. You don't have to backfill anything. Don't worry about it." And they said, "Yeah, yeah, we'll pay for you to go." They paid for my hotel, my flights, and my registration. Which, thank you, because what that did to me when I got there, and I talked about this in Student of the Game, when I got there, I saw mustaches and t-shirts and all these dudes walking around that were so into the job. I thought they were posers, right? I was like, look at all these clowns walking around, dude. Why are you so into this job? You know what I mean? Like, but after going, that was day one. After going through that conference and listening to guys like Corley Moore, Chief Scott Thompson, doing hands-on training with Kyle Romigas, that turned around my career for the end of time. And now I feel like it's my mission, and that's what Fit.Fire.Fortitude has been doing, is taking off the blinders for anybody that's in their fire department that thinks that the fire service is just what it is inside the walls of their own department. Because it's not. The brotherhood and the fire service are so much bigger than what we think it is. And I can't get enough.
No, dude, that's awesome. And I love it because I had been to a few classes up until Mile High, just here and there. But Mile High conference was the first conference I'd been to, and so I didn't get that initial shock factor like you're talking about. But like as I was getting into this stuff, man, like, and I still face it all the time, man. Like, oh, why are you just all over podcasts and you're listening to this and you're watching this, man? Like, I made a joke. I worked on a crew one time and threw up the scrap on the TV in the living room. Yeah. And that was probably the only time those guys weren't sitting in the recliner. You know what I mean? Because I made them watch it with me.
Yeah.
But I went to Mile High and I was just like, not necessarily starstruck, but I was like, man, there are some giants here, right? Like Ray McCormick, FDNY legend, is sitting in the corner of the room taking notes. You know what I mean? Steve Robertson, Todd Edwards. Golly, I learned so much from those guys. And it really, like, as much as I was already into it and really diving into the job, I ride an engine and an ambulance. I don't want to get called out about that, but I ride an engine, and man, engine work is what I love right now. And Steve Robertson, man, those two guys blew my mind when it just came to stretching hose. You know what I mean? So I was like, I went with my battalion chief, which was awesome. He had already kind of built some relationships and stuff. So just being able to communicate and connect with some of the instructors there already, I mean, that was invaluable. And but just being in that conference and being surrounded by a bunch of dudes where I know that if I was sitting in the corner watching a podcast, chances are guys were going to come watch it with me, instead of like making fun of me for it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I am curious. Like, I know I'm kind of new with the social media as far as like, I've been on social media as myself, but taking over TBM, I'm running all their social media pages. And you said it was a way to hold yourself accountable, right? And I'm 100% facing that right now. The Fit.Fire page, every December they do the 100 burpees a day.
Yeah.
So, dude, day one, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I posted a video of it. And day two came, I was like, golly, maybe I should have posted that video. Because here we are, day 12, and we're about to knock them out after this. Yep. But it's a way to hold myself accountable, which I absolutely love. You need accountability partners. And instead of just having that one person that, lives across town or something, now I have a world of people to hold myself accountable with. So I love that part about it.
Yeah, shout out to John Sparrow and what he's doing too, man.
No joke. As far as the Navy goes, me and you kind of talked briefly just about how the fire service claims to be a paramilitary organization. In your experience, is that true? Are we a paramilitary organization or not?
No, so I'm speaking on my experience, my perspective, and my fire department, right? There may be certain departments that handle it differently, but one big thing that I can shoot right out of the gate is basic training, right? When you join the military and they send you off to boot camp, they take you out of your home, they shave your head, they make you look like everybody else. You're cut off from everybody. The only access you have to contact family is writing letters back and forth. You know what I mean? And I think the reason why the military does that is because their mission specifically is to go to war. And they need to pull you out of your environment to teach you that. In the fire service, they don't necessarily do that. I mean, unfortunately, most fire academies, they're teaching you IFSTA, right? They're getting you the certifications so that they can go tell the city or the district that you're qualified to ride on an engine to go squirt water, right? In boot camp, they put drill instructors and they rip you apart. They physically just beat you with like push-ups and burpees and all kinds of stuff. And the drill sergeants are supposed to be there to make you hate them. And why is that? It's because they make you as a unit learn to come together and hold each other accountable to keep the drill instructor off your back. And that is something that you actually learn for your entire military career is, hey, we need to hold each other accountable, however that looks. So that way, because one person gets in trouble in the military, everybody gets in trouble in the military, right? One person screws up, nobody gets to leave the base. Everybody's staying here, everybody's scrubbing toilets, everybody's doing chores, everybody's doing PT. In the fire service, how many people are holding each other accountable? Right? You're talking about how you are into the job, but there's not that many people that you are around, at least in your area, that are that into it, right? On a bigger scale, in the Navy, our core values are honor, courage, and commitment. In the entire United States Navy and the Marines, the same core values. Every single sailor and Marine operates off honor, courage, and commitment. In the fire service, it's a mixed bag. You got departments with like 9 different core values, and their own personnel can't even tell you what the core values are. So I understand that we have a rank structure and a chain of command and things like that, but I mean, you can walk down to Wall Street and somebody's got working for a CEO or something like that. There's managers and supervisors through all that. So that's technically a rank structure. And let me touch on this. At least in my area, the fire service is becoming more white collar than it is blue collar. In the military, tell the Marines that they're going to become a white collar organization. Those dudes are trained to kill. Like that's their job. They're the hardest military fighting force in the world, and they know it. Take the Army, right? The Army they can take over a country. They can set up a government. They can do all kinds of stuff. But what's their job first? They're a rifleman first. How many fire service organizations are going around telling their people like, look, we do EMS, we do hazmat, we do PR events, but you are a firefighter first. That better be what you are proficient at. I can't say every single firefighter operates that way. I don't know if every organization shares that message with them, because we're operating as a business. We have voters we have to worry about passing mill levies. In the Navy, they benefit off taxpayer dollars. There's no chiefs and supervisors worrying about customer service when it comes to the military, right? Like, you're trained to go to war. You better do what you need to do. And if we got a problem, we make you stand at attention, find a little spot on the wall, take your ass chewing, and then walk out and go do your job. There's no human resources in the military. Maybe it's going that way a little bit nowadays, but when I was in there, no, man, you took your ass chewing. We held each other accountable. I've been knocked out by my own teammates twice in the Navy for running my mouth, thinking I was better than everybody, trying to, thinking I was hot shit, and my people held me accountable. Right. So I think that's the difference between the military and the fire service is lack of accountability. And we're operating more as a white collar organization nowadays than we are firefighters. And I'll close it off with this, right? Like, we run a lot of EMS, right? But we were supposed to be firefighters first. If we get stroke alerts, cardiac alerts, trauma alerts, like, we respond, we do our pre-hospital thing. But what do we do after that? We take them to the hospital, right? Because those are the specialists when it comes to healthcare. When grandma's house catches on fire in our jurisdiction, who's supposed to be the subject matter experts in the jurisdiction? That's us. We're supposed to be firefighters first. But do we have the message that the Army is telling their people? Like, you're a rifleman first? Are we telling our firefighters, you are a firefighter first? I think it's going away. There's a lot of people, TBM and other groups are fighting to keep that culture and bring it back. Cody Trestrell with firemanship, he's blowing the lid off this damn thing. And I can't wait for firemanship to come back, because it's going to change. It's going to rip some doors down, and I can't wait to see it.
It was really hard to sit here and keep my mouth shut throughout all that. Because maybe I should just say hell yeah and move on, because
my bad, dude.
No, man, I am blessed. I'm blessed. I work around a bunch of just like plugged in, and I truly mean it. I posted it on a post not long ago. Like, I work around some of the baddest dudes I know. All 3 shifts. I mean, it doesn't matter who you're working with. Chances are they're a bad dude. And I work for an organization where we do see our fair amount of fire duty. We fight a good amount of fire. We're not fighting as much as Houston and Dallas or anything like that, but for our size, we do see a good amount of fire. But we obviously run way more EMS calls than fires.
Mm-hmm.
And I work around some of the freaking best paramedics that I've ever seen before, dude. Mm-hmm. I worked private EMS, man, and I was a way better paramedic back then than I am now. And maybe it was because of the people I was around, but mostly it's because of the group of dudes that I have. And I'll speak specifically on my crew. I used to think that I was a good paramedic, and I'm easily the worst paramedic on my crew right now because I work around some dudes that are that good. I am blessed. We do hold ourselves accountable when it comes to the fire side. Of course, with calls and busyness and stuff like that, it gets tough, but I can promise you this: at some point throughout our day, we are doing something fire related as it pertains to training or talking about it, at least. You know what I mean? And I do believe that our organization truly supports us being firemen first. And I couldn't have said it any better than you right there, right? Like, when the house catches fire, like, we're not calling in a specialist group of people. Like, it's us. We are those specialists. And that's awesome. I love that. That's probably going to be the soundbite for the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you are blessed, because I mean, I hear when I go to conferences or I talk to people on social media or just listen to the scrap, right? The culture is a big issue right now in the fire service, right? Like, being a fire first culture is starting to become less and less common. But I'm looking forward to what the fire service is going to churn out in the next few years because of social media and all the cadre and the conferences. It's going to be good.
Me too. I'm almost, like I said earlier, I'm almost ashamed to admit, like, that I even claimed myself to be a fireman, really up until I got hired at my current department, just because of what I didn't know, man. Like, and I did have like a bad attitude towards people that didn't take the job as seriously as I do now, right? Like, my viewpoint, I believe that every single person should look at the job the same way I do. And it created a point of contingency almost, right? And like, you live and learn. Like, dude, I was young in my fire service career and just hyped up on everything that I was knowing. And I'm like, you guys work at the same place I do. Like, why are you not doing this? You know what I mean? Right. Like, why are you not learning this? I felt like everyone should be putting the exact same amount of effort that I did. And, I'll throw in a story here. Like, I use the term shitbags a lot, right? And was humbled very quickly at my high conference. And did you catch the standards presentation?
Was that by Steve Robertson?
No.
No, the actual group, the standard.
Yeah.
No, I missed out on that one.
So at the end, they did kind of like a Q&A session, and it was Craig, and I might mispronounce his last name, Stalloway or something like that.
Yeah, he's out here in Colorado too.
Yeah, and dude, I'm telling you, I followed them on social media for the longest time. I didn't even know they were firemen. But there was a question talking about, like, how do you deal with shitbags? And the answer that he gave, and I probably do a bad job at paraphrasing it, but he kind of made the dude start looking inward. And like I said, it humbled me and convicted me really quickly, because he was like, essentially, he went down this long line. He's like, well, let me ask you a question. Do you think, does his wife think he's a shitbag? Does his kids think he's a shitbag? And essentially what it alluded to is the fact that there's levels to this, right? Like, you might be here when it comes to being into the job, but just because he's down here doesn't make him any less of a person or a man. And I was like, golly, man, like, there's a couple of people I'll apologize to that for, you know what I mean? Because we are a bunch of type A personalities that are into the job and that want to do well and want to do good. And there's guys that aren't going to be as into the job as we are, but when they show up, they're going to perform just as well as we do. You know what I mean? And so for that took a lot of, like, all right, how are we going to go about including these people and getting them on board with the culture that we're wanting to push here, with knowing that they're not going to be watching podcasts every day. They're not going to be studying. They're not going to be taking outside classes. But how can we bring those guys around? When before I was like, hey, there's a line in the sand, dude. see you later. If you don't want to come on this train ride, we're going to leave you behind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I have this philosophy. So I act as a company officer from time to time. I'm actually trying to take the test in January to throw my hat in the lieutenant's exam, right? But I have this philosophy called no ceilings. When I first started doing company officer stuff, I tried to hit the ground running. Every person that's ever sat in the right seat tried to do this, right? We're going to train, we're going to work out, we're going to do this every set, and you know it falls apart from time to time. But you know you try to be super ambitious. But what I lacked was taking inventory of what my guys were able and willing to give. Like where are they at in their careers? Where are they at with their lives, right? One of my engineer may have two kids at home and he's putting all his time and focus in being a great dad and husband. And when he comes into work, he's maybe operating at 40%. And that 40% still gets the job done, right? I might, you know, have another guy who's dealing with other stuff. And I can't come in hard charging, trying to be hardcore because I've been to a couple conferences and read a book or two and being like, we're doing this every day. So I started asking the guys like, hey, I'd like to get some training done, maybe a group workout. Like, what do you guys got to give me today? What can you give? Maybe we're not going to get packed out on air and pull hose to the 5th floor of a structure. Maybe we can do tabletops today. What can you give me? Let's do something, but what can you give me? And the reason why I call it no ceilings is what's your ceiling today is what I ask them. What's your ceiling? And if I respect what they're able to give me that set, next set, maybe I can be like, where's your ceiling at today? And they'd be like, all right, you know what? Last set wasn't that bad. You didn't pressure me. You weren't a dick about me not want to work out for the day. I can give this more. I will give this more to you because I respect the fact that you're trying to build this crew unity, but I can only give so much. And like you said, there's guys that may not be 100% into the job because of their season of life, but they're still dialed in every time they come into work. And to supplement that, I had a conversation with Corey Moore about this because I was struggling, same as you. I was like, what do I do about these dudes on the recliner at 9 a.m. on day one? You know, his thing is mutts don't scrap, right? And I wrote a caption in one of my posts talking about like, you got the mutts in your firehouse doing this, da da da. You got to make sure that. And I was coming out all hardcore, and someone in my department caught wind of it, sent it to my battalion chief, and I ended up in a closed door meeting, right? But I asked Corley, I was like, what do I do? What do I do about this? You know, like I want to like motivate these people, but I don't want to call them out. And he said, I want you to think about the 343 in FTNY, the most heroic, iconic firefighters in our lifetime, right? 9/11, 343. He's like, you think all those dudes were into the job? He's like, those guys probably weren't 100% hard charging every day they came in the shift, but guess what? They climbed those stairs no matter what. They showed up when the bells went off. They showed up and they went to work. You got to remember that. Just because just like you said, just because not everybody's into the job doesn't mean they're not willing and capable to do the job. And I truly believe no one got into the fire service to suck at being firefighters. They just maybe fell off along the way, got complacent, maybe got, harassed for being too into the job. And now they've suppressed their motivation. Because I see that all the time, right? The crabs in the bucket, they win sometimes.
Man, what I have been trying to do, not necessarily with my crew, but just like, my crew, every single one of the guys on my crew are awesome. They really are. I don't say that just because they might watch this. Like, they really are some awesome, bad dudes. And something that, honestly, I can't take credit for as a driver that used to, we were just trying to get to where we're all on board with getting better. And so we'll start the day off like, which I'm sure you understand. Some days you might get stuck on the ambulance more than you're riding the engine. I don't necessarily know how y'all rotate, but at least for my organization, there are times where we can get stuck on the ambulance a lot more. And so the way this driver had his mindset was like, I'm going to start the day with doing some fireman shit just to remind myself that this is still the greatest job in the world and I'm still a fireman and able to do that. So instead of doing the usual air pack check, we're going to turn it on, check our pass device, make sure we're getting air, man. We turn that into, all right, well, in the morning times, we're using the same amount of air. We're going to do a mask up drill. So whatever, you throw your hood on, your gloves, your helmet, do a mask up drill. Cool. Now we've moved on from that, and we're going to do a mask up drill, and we have a little bundle built. We run a Minuteman, so we do an accordion forward and V split. And I don't want to sit here and lie and say we do it every single morning, but I will say for the most part, every single morning, that's what we're doing every time we come on shift. And so been trying to just build in a culture of training in a sense of like every day, regardless of how busy, regardless of the inspections or the PRs or whatever we have going, because that's just a part of the job nowadays, is we're going to get some type of training in, and really just try to push that in and hammer it in. Is there anything that you have found that's worked? Maybe someone struggling with the exact same thing I'm talking about, right? Maybe their crew doesn't train all the time. It's their quarterly battalion training or something like that, and they really want to push their crew to start getting on board with this training.
So I had the opportunity to step in for a company officer. He went off for a couple months for a medical problem, right? And the battalion chiefs, you know, bless their heart, trusted me to steer the ship for a couple months, right? And I knew these people wanted some structure. They wanted to train. They wanted to get after it. Whatever the company officer was doing before, I was like, I want to do something different. This is an experiment, because I wasn't necessarily a promoted guy. So I told every single one of them, I'm like, this is our crew. There's no like promoted boss here. There's no bugles in this house. We're going to run this how we think we should run it. And I wrote Monday through Sunday on the board. And I'm like, well, let's try this. What if we come up with like a themed training for every day of the week? And I involved the entire crew to come up with the plans, right? And this is totally a millennial thing, right? But it was like hashtag mask up Monday, tactics Tuesday, water flow Wednesday, ladder throw Thursday, forcible entry Friday, search Sunday, size up Sunday, or search Saturday, size up Sunday. We came up with that, and it got to the point, like once we wrote it on the board, we knew what to expect every time we came in on shift now. It was like water flow Wednesday, like what are we doing? And I would actually I would empower some of the people to be like, all we got to do is flow water. You come up with the training scenario. And they're like, well, damn, I haven't run the ground monitor. I haven't done master stream. I haven't done 2.5. Let's do 2.5, up a flight of stairs. Let's go over here and do it. Like, let's work on Camilla grip. Let's do flow and go. And it just naturally happened by just putting it on the board and empowering the crew to be like, we're going to train. Let's at least come up with the theme training so we know what to expect every time we came in. And I think that was a hit. Like everybody bought in because they participated in it, right? It's not like me coming in and be like, hey, we're doing this today. Yeah. So if you're looking for a way to motivate people to train, like just set an expectation for like a theme.
Yeah, and people want to be in charge of something, right? Like the whole automate and delegate, man. That's exactly what you did. You automated it by doing the mask up Mondays and tactics Tuesdays. Now we're going to delegate. Okay, well, Tailboard, it's your job to come up with the mask up drill, on Monday. And next Tuesday when we come on shift, now it's the driver's turn or whatever the case may be. And when you automate those things, now you don't have to think about them, just like you said, because I'm sure you guys have too. But like we've run into it today. It's like, man, what are we training on today? And then it becomes 3:00 in the afternoon. Hey, what are we training on today? It's the same thing about asking your wife where you were going to eat for dinner, right? Now it's 5:30 in the evening. What do you want to eat today? It's like, oh, hell, I don't know. So whenever we automate things, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Something else I wanted to hit on is just like being able to influence those around us, and not necessarily our crews, right? We have our crews, and in my department, I don't know if it's the same for yours. That's why I'm asking. It seems like there's a bunch of moving parts, whether we're working overtime, whether we're promoting. Crews do stay together, but there's typically one rotating part, right? A tailboard's going to promote to driver, that driver's going to promote to officer at some point. And so how can we take what we have at my crew? I'll use my crew for an example, right? Because I've said it. I work around some great dudes. How do I take my crew, right, and then simply start planting seeds throughout a department, which I'm not necessarily calling mine. I'm just saying in a department where the culture might not be lacking, right? How do we drive something into our crew so well that now when they go to their new crew, now they're doing the same thing that one person started on the previous crew?
So I'm actually in the process of running this experiment on our shift right now. I approached my battalion chief and allowed him or asked him for permission to work on this. I said, what if we came up with structured training for every single station to do, like crawl, walk, run style trainings. And then at the end of the month, we like kind of race each other for stress inoculation, right? We don't have to do it at the same time, but the battalion chiefs can go around to the stations, time the crews to do it, right? And let's talk about forceful entry, right? Two-person conventional inward swinging, two-person conventional outward swinging, single person with a Halligan, all this stuff, and then you incorporate forceful entry with live fire layout, call out, surge, removing a victim, and then you just structure it like that. Hey, all we're doing this week is we're working on two-person forceful entry. This week we're working on single-person forceful entry, and you got to have buy-in from the top to help spread the message, right? Because tailboard firefighter at station 63 is not going to influence the guys at 67, right? Unfortunately, you got to have some bugles to have a little to swing a bigger axe, right? So I coordinated with the battalion chief, and I was like, can I build something out and then present it to you, and then if you go around to the station and say, hey, we're just going to have a little friendly competition, and this month we're doing VES. This month we're doing 2.5 inch to the second floor, and everybody gets to work on it in their own firehouse. But then I think what happens is that every single crew at every single station is doing the same training, right? And it's encouraged by the leadership. And then we're racing each other. You get bragging rights. And so now when the tailboard moves stations, he knows that that crew that he's moving to has done the same exact training, right? And you got to get buy-in from top to bottom. But you need to have a battalion chief that is humble enough to allow the backseat to coordinate things like that, right? I think that's one problem we run in the fire service is that the orders really, the direction comes from top down. Leadership should be from all angles, from bottom up, top down. Even the rookie should be able to come up with an idea here and there, right? That's something we need to work on. But I think having structured training for an entire shift and everybody's on the same game plan, that's one way to influence training for all the houses to be on the same page.
I think really a lot of people have such a good idea and a good understanding of leadership, especially if you have any presence on social media. And I don't know, this might be an algorithm thing, but I will say over the past year, I've really dove into the study of leadership. And I think some people have it figured out naturally in a way. But I also feel like people they believe their version of leadership is the only way of leadership, if that makes sense. And whenever you have studied leadership from the leadership gurus, it's really easy just to point those little flaws out that a lot of times they might be little, but they're fatal. And so something you just said is the exact thing. Being humble enough, being not having a big enough ego to think that, hey, this training has to come from me. I'm not going to let a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year guy come up with this training when I've been here 20 years. You know what I mean? So having the humility to really empower people, right? Like that's what should happen. The battalion chief should come to, I get that they have like their own trainings that they must, they have to do and everything, but going to and this is for the captains as well, right? Like going to your tailboards, being like, what do you need to work on? What do you want to work on? Or not even what do you need? What do you want? Hey, here, you're developing this training. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's huge. And another thing is just from leading up, right? I think you said it. We have to be able to lead from all aspects, from the tailboard to the battalion chief. And somewhere where you and I are sitting right now, I know you're studying to become a company officer, but being able to lead from that tailboard spot, it could be a tricky road. Have you been able to effectively lead from that back seat?
So let me start this off with, I'm as a Navy guy, right? Naturally, I'm a student of extreme ownership and Jocko Willing, right? He's kind of set the standard of how I want to lead, right? And his philosophy is there are no bad teams, there's bad leaders, right? There's no bad crews, there's only bad leaders. So let me back up and defend the battalion chiefs out there when I say they should be humble enough to allow the tailboard to teach, that should only come hand in hand with a good relationship between the tailboard and the battalion chief, right? Because say for instance, me, Mr. like social media Fit.Fire.Fortitude, who's posting all this stuff that kind of maybe calls out some things and rubs people the wrong way. And I don't have a good working relationship with my battalion chief. And I go up to him and I'm like, hey, chief, we need to be doing this. Right? How do you think that's going to be perceived by the battalion chief or captain, anybody? I could say that to the guy, the other tailboard next to me, and he's going to be like, well, you can go F yourself. Right? So I think leadership, to have effective leadership, it's cliche as shit, but you got to have the relationships, right? Have a good relationship with the battalion chief, where I just go up to him and I'm like, hey chief, like, what's your philosophy on training? Like, do you do the crawl, walk, run? Do you do stress inoculation? Like, what's worked for you in the past? Like, oh man, I would love to see something like that, with all the crews, because me personally, every time I go to a different station, they're doing something else, and we were working on this over here, but now I got to start over here. So, I mean, I don't know, like maybe I think it'd be a good idea if we went with your philosophy, chief, on getting the crews to work on the same page. And I don't know, maybe time them from time, like make it their idea, right? And why am I doing that? Because not only do I want to build a relationship with him so I can influence the shift, but I want everybody to win. I'm frustrated as shit because in my department, I don't know why, but every 6 months they rotate the tailboards because we have the medic units, right? Guys riding backwards. So oftentimes you'll switch from the medic unit to the engine. And we have a truck, but we have a Quint. So we have guys rotating on and off of that. And so there's always constant movement. So you can be with one really good crew for a few months, but what does that mean? You just got into the walk phase with that crew, and now you're moving. So establishing a relationship to be able to influence leadership at the tailboard is definitely key. And once again, the tailboard has to have the humility to be able to do that. Because I know the tailboard, an ambitious tailboard, wants their ideas to be heard, right? Like, hey, I came up with this great idea. Look at me. I'm a superstar. I'm an up-and-comer. I'm the man. I'm going to be a company officer just someday. And these are the ideas that I have. And everybody should follow them because I'm great. Like, that's not, no one's going to listen to that shit, man. We're all type A people in the fire service. So it's got to start with being humble and establishing those relationships before you came up with any idea. And how do I know all this shit? Is because I was that guy that came in. I was that guy that was like, we need to be doing this. We're doing this wrong. I'm sick and tired of this, blah, 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 sitting at the kitchen table complaining because that's what we do so well. And I finally realized I want to be a company officer someday, man. Like, what's the best way I can start making a change? Well, I need to start acting like a company officer, even as a tailboard. And acting as a company officer means I need to start building relationships now. So when I'm in that promoted position, trying to influence some change, they already see me doing it the right way. So sorry, long-winded answer, but I mean, man, that's my belief, dude.
Yeah, I have put my foot in my mouth more times than I can count, and I'm still mending some broken relationships. From when I first started, I was one of those guys that probably ran my mouth a little bit too much. But luckily met some people that put me in my place and kind of set me down on the right path. But you answered that question the exact way I was hoping that you would, honestly. And I'm going to draw it back in. I know. You like Corley Moore, Chief Moore. When we had him on our podcast not long ago, I felt like I was asking him all these questions, and there was a common theme to every single answer he had. And it was relationships. You have to build those relationships. You have to have a good relationship to have tough conversations. You have to have a good relationship to have good influence. Like all of these things. You're trying to deal with I won't call him, but a shitbag, right? You have to have that relationship to be able to call those people out, man. And that is something that I took to heart and really, really worked on, because without a relationship, I mean, you can't get better. You're not going to influence people. You're not going to get them to do what they want, what you want them to do. You're not even going to allow them to think that your idea is their idea. Cause I mean, that's gold right there. If you can allow that person to think that the idea that you have brought forward is their idea, however you may do that. Some might call it manipulation. I don't. I call it influence, right? You're not using it for any personal gain. You're not using it for any cynical ways. Like, it is to improve yourself first and foremost, but those around you. And if you don't have a relationship with those people, it's not going to work. I like to think nowadays that I'm way better at asking good questions and being able to build relationships, get to know people. And when you genuinely care about someone, like they feel that, right? Like I said, I'm mending some broken relationships that I probably started off on the wrong foot with people. And there's only one way to get back on that, man. And it's a slow, steady pace, and it's being genuinely interested in what they have going on. And one day, I hope that and I'm not saying that there's a ton of them, but surely there's some. Like one day, I want to be on the same level with every single person as it pertains to influence and relationship. And there's other people that you want some more influence with than not. But when it comes from leading from that tailboard spot, something that I have learned, and I'll steal a quote from Craig Rochelle. I don't know if you ever listened to his leadership podcast, but if you haven't, it's awesome. He's a pastor in Oklahoma. I don't want to misspeak, but I think it's a Tulsa area. And he has a leadership podcast, and they're awesome. They're like 20, 30 minutes long. And one of the quotes he says is, if you're willing to do what others won't, you will gain influence that others don't have. And what does that mean? That means for me, I'm going to be doing every single thing that no one else wants to do. I might not be the newest guy at my station, but I'm going to seek out the worst job, right? I'm going to anticipate the needs of my company officer, of my drivers, and I'm going to try to get those done. And slowly over time, I like to think that now I have a pretty good influence over my company officer. Not saying that I control him or anything like that. Like my company officer is awesome, but now whenever I bring an idea to the table or I have conversation to be had, he listens and he gives me good input. And now I don't even have to try to convince him that it was his idea. Now he's like, hey, this sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. And I don't even have to worry about convincing that. And that's all based off relationships, right? So I'm like I said, I think you answered that question perfectly, man. As far as leadership goes, you're studying to become a company officer, and hopefully you get promoted, come January. I think that's awesome. What do you think that what are some of the things that you're hoping to accomplish as a company officer? Like, what do you want your crew to be like?
My main motivation is I want to be able to share the wealth of knowledge that I've obtained. We've already talked about being the guys that are into the job and seeing what the fire service is outside of just our own department, and being able to influence a culture in your organization is a little bit easier as a company officer, right? Being a mentor to people is a little bit easier as a company officer. Can you do it as a tailboard? Absolutely. You should already be doing it, right? But my main goal as a company officer is to be able to influence those people coming up in the fire service, the new people, to show them earlier than I got to experience it, what real brotherhood is. You know what I mean? Like encouraging them to go out and meet these giants of the fire service, so they just like get infected the way I did about this passion, this desire to serve. And admittedly, I didn't have it, and I'm not trying to talk negatively of anybody in my organization, but there hasn't been a lot of great influence with company officers ahead of me that have motivated me to go out and do that. I accidentally found this spark, this passion. So I feel like stepping into a company officer role and taking these people under my wing to develop them to become better firemen than I've ever been, because I squandered the first 5 years of my career. After I got done off of probation, I was in cruise control. I thought I had made it. You know what I mean? When the tones go off, I'm going to go do my job. I'm going to write the reports, and I'm going to go home, and then I'm going to not think about the fire service till I'm back on ship. Well, that's completely different for me now. And the idea, because my goal is I want, when the name of my department drops, I want people to be like, "Ooh, yeah, that organization's legit. They are dialed." You know what I mean? I could say something like Houston Fire, Wichita Fire, and everybody's like, "Yeah, those dudes are dialed. Look, their culture is legit." And that's a motivation for me, is to influence some type of culture in the department where so many people are dialed and bought in, that we have this reputation to when our name drops, it doesn't have to include my name, but when the name of my organization is said, people are impressed by just the name altogether, and people are lining up at the door to get in here because we work hard, we play hard, we back each other up, and the community knows that we're going to lay it all down for them. But that starts with having the vision, and it starts with sharing the vision and being able to mentor those people to embrace the same that leader's intent to have that vision as well. So I'm just on that mission to encourage one person at a time, whether it's above me or below me. Obviously, the people under me are going to be easier to influence, and I believe company officer is the next step for me. I didn't have this goal until recently, but I told myself I'm gonna lay it all. I'm gonna have a long trajectory goal of becoming the training officer, because I don't know how your department works, but there's a limited budget in training, and not a lot of people even know how to submit an outside training request to go to conferences. But what if there was a training chief that handpicked people in the organization to go out and get that knowledge and bring it back and let it manifest within the ranks by us investing in our people? I'm not saying that doesn't happen right now. It's just I believe that that's the direction that I'm being pulled to right now.
Yeah, as far as training goes, my department doesn't necessarily pay for any type of outside training. I know our union likes to give out some scholarships and stuff like that, but for the most part, everything everyone goes on is self-paid. And really that speaks volumes about the guys that I work with, because there's a lot of us that go to these conferences, and some go to more than others just because of financial reasons and whatever. But the beautiful thing about it is the people that do go to these conferences, like now we're coming back and we're sharing what we've learned, right? And we're just infecting one person after another. And that's what I love most about it. We gave a lot of props, and I say I wasn't necessarily even involved, but before I ever got at my department, a bunch of our guys went and took Brothers in Battles, the VES Beyond the Door. And practically everything we teach when it comes to search now is directly from them. Like every single thing. It's just a collection of other stuff, but firefighter rescue survey and VES Beyond the Door, and then personal experiences as that pertains to our department. Some of the grabs that we've had at our department, they're barely even a statistic on the firefighter rescue survey, but it seems to be a common theme at our department. So we're taking we have the right people in the right spots for sure. And that's kind of where this conversation is leading to. But it takes people to understand that we aren't the only people out there, and we should seek mentorship and guidance from people that make grabs every time they go to the firehouse. And I know that's an exaggeration, but people that not have just made one or two or three grabs, that these people are making like grabs after grabs after grabs. My battalion chief, he is one of his mentors is Chief Phillips from Houston. I think he retired after 30 something years with the fire department. And just something that keeps going through his head all the time is Chief Phillips told him that he has never made a grab anywhere but the ground. And it's just saying, hey, you need to get a tripod position, search. Right. And so those things are always getting repeated and taught to people and just passed on. And I'm lucky enough, to be surrounded by a bunch of guys that are plugged in naturally. So now I'm getting the opportunity to be a part of these new hire orientations and teaching these guys. And, sometimes just from a backseat role, but heck, that's all I'm asking for, like just to be a fly on the wall in the conversations. And those things are getting, from my understanding, those things are getting passed on now that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they weren't getting passed on. You were getting those once you maybe hopefully reached a plugged in crew, and now they're getting relayed the moment you get hired, which I think is awesome. And I feel like that's kind of like, at least what it seems for me is that's the way our fire service is going in general, is just shared information, shared experiences, whether you have 2 stations and you run 2,500 calls a year, or you have 8 stations and you run 25,000 calls a year. It seems like now that information, thanks to social media, is just out there, and now they're getting implemented in these places, which I think is awesome. And being able to influence those people, like you talked about goals, man, like that's a goal for me. And I think I have a passion more for teaching than anything. And I don't have anything to teach right now. I promise you that. Anything that I was going to teach is something that was just taught to me that I wrote down on a note card. But before I ever got into the fire service, like I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. And I think that's kind of where it stems from. So any chance that I can get to go in there and teach and pass stuff on, and that's what I would love to do. And as you move into a company officer role, you are going to have that influence over your crew. You're going to have the ability to share that information and be able to influence the new guys and maybe get in on some new hire training. And that is, in my opinion, the epitome of a company officer. It's just to be able to pass on information, right? I'm a steal of something else. It's just like to make everyone around you to know every single thing that you know. So naturally, they're automatically going to know more, right? Because now they're bringing everything that they know and everything you know. It's just to elevate those around them. Yeah. And that's all I ask for as a company officer. And, I poke fun at my captain at work because he's a truck guy stuck on an engine for now. So I'm getting the best of both worlds. He loves engine work, although he probably doesn't want people to know that. He loves engine work, but he also knows truck work like the back of his hand. So although it might be a little like sacrilegious, like any chance we get, we're going to go over some truck stuff as well. But that's awesome, man. I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I wish that we had the rest of the afternoon to go. But as these things go, I think we've already been going for over an hour. So real quick, man, how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to know anything about Fit.Fire.Fortitude? If they want you on their podcast, you've been an awesome guest, man. I hope we can do it again. How can people reach you?
Yeah, first off, thanks for the opportunity, man. Yeah, like you said, it's a great conversation, and I can talk about this stuff all day. But the best way people can get a hold of me, my cell phone number is 303-330-2306. Text me, call me anytime. And the only reason why I'm comfortable doing that is because I've had the privilege of reaching out to people that I've never met in my entire life, and they were willing to have a conversation with me and give me advice. So anybody that's got any thoughts or wanted to reach out, absolutely do so. I'm most active on Instagram, which is the Fit.Fire.Fortitude page. You can message me there, and I'll get right back to you.
That's awesome, man. Well, once again, Preston, thank you for just coming on the podcast. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for the Tailboard Misfits podcast. Don't forget, head over to our website, pick up some merch. We still have plenty of hats, t-shirts, some activewear, some designer type stuff. It's all really good quality, and you won't be disappointed. But until then, we will catch you on the next one. Thanks.